Now that these two bottles have their own videos, it's time for the PAC and a Port Charlotte Shootout. Let's do this. Welcome to Whisky Riffs. If you're new to my channel, I'm Kevin, and thank you for stopping by. Today we're going to look at, taste, and review the Port Charlotte Heavily Peated PAC 01 from 2011. This is the third whiskey in the Port Charlotte Cask Exploration Series. I'm still struggling with that freaking word. This is the third whiskey in the Port Charlotte Cask Exploration Series that I've reviewed. The PAC, before that was the MRC, and it all started with the OLC, which was a really beautiful expression that made me more interested in diving into the other two. And today we're going to taste this one and then pull the other two in for a quick shootout. Like the other two, this expression is bottled at cask strength. This particular bottle is 56.1 ABV. They're all slightly different. When you bottle at cask strength, you don't get to control the exact percentage of alcohol, and that's a good thing. Another thing that they don't tamper with is the coloring. This has no added coloring, and it's non-chill filtered, which means they haven't touched that either. I appreciate all those things in a whiskey expression. If you've watched my previous two videos on the Port Charlotte Cask Exploration Series, you'll know that 200 casks are sitting in the Bruichladdich warehouses that have different types of wood, that have different ages on them, and these are the kind of experiments that Bruichladdich and Port Charlotte are using to feed this exploration series and give us some very unique flavors with different combinations of woods and time spent in those types of casks. Now, this expression has two different parcels of casks that it spent time in. The first parcel contains Scotch that has spent 6 years in first fill American X whiskey casks, and then 2 years in X red wine casks from the Polac region of France. The second parcel has whiskey matured for 7 years in American X whiskey casks, and then transferred to second fill X red wine casks from the Polac region of France. So remember that first fill and second fill means the first fill of whiskey after its use and the second fill of whiskey after its use. The original fill doesn't count in the first fill, second fill wording for these particular expressions. The PRC and the MRC are similar, and then they both use French X wine casks. The MRC was the Bordeaux region. So basically, we're going to see some similarity in flavors because wine imparts specific flavors to whiskey, especially if they're both red wines. They're going to give you similar types of profiles. Just like if you have sherry, there are certain flavors that you can expect from sherry, like the darker fruits, the raisins, the dark chocolate, things like that. Wines are probably going to give you more brighter fruits, but still some of those red, darker berries in them. Right off the bat, I'm always impressed by the way Port Charlotte, which is part of Bruichladdich, one of their three main bottlings that they do at Bruichladdich, Port Charlotte, the Octomore, and then their unpeated division, which is the Bruichladdich name. I'm always impressed at how they can put a cask strength whiskey in a bottle, and yet the nose just doesn't smack me with alcohol burn right away. And I'm not sure if that's some black magic or whatever else, but I'm never feeling offended by the nose on a Bruichladdich expression. I do get the sweetness. I am getting a little bit of a nutty note to it. The maltiness is pushed down by the sweetness. I'm not getting that so much. And the smoke from the peat is not really forward either. It's a little bit behind all the sweetness. I'm getting a little nuttiness in there and some, I don't say tannins, kind of like leather tannins, like used, well-worn leather furniture, not a really strong, harsh leather note. On the first taste, you are going to get that cask strength whiskey hit at first. The burn is going to be there. But there was also an original sweetness to it. It's very spicy. On the second taste, I'm getting some of the spice, and the flavors are sweet, but not dominant. They are subtle fruits, berries, A little bit of citrus notes in there, but very, very subtle. Maybe a little caramel or brown sugar taste. But I'm getting a lot more nuts on the flavor profile where I didn't realize or notice that when I was tasting the MRC or the OLC. On the finish, it's nice and long like the other two expressions, and it has a spiciness to it, a little more citrus on the linger for it, and the nuttiness is still there, and the fruits are still there. The oak is strong, and the vanilla notes come through a little bit more on the finish for me. But like the other two, it's a long finish, and it's really pleasant. And any of these three whiskeys are beautiful if you enjoy complexity, if you enjoy seeking and searching for flavors in the whiskey. There's definitely a lot in here that I would be hard pressed to pull out every note. The spice is a little more harsh than I remember the other two being, but we'll check that out in a second. I'll pour a couple other glasses and we'll compare and contrast, because frankly, I can't trust my memory even over a couple days. So when you're talking about a week or more, hey, it's gone. I am constantly amazed at whiskey tasters and reviewers. They can say, oh, I had this bottle 6 months ago and it had these 15 tasting notes. I'm like, you're amazing. I cannot do that kind of thing. All right, let me get the other two out because it's worthwhile to pull them all three together. And of course, I like pouring a lot of whiskey. So, yeah. You know, I love these unique bottle shapes for Port Charlotte, but I hate pouring whiskey out of them. It's not easy. The shoulders bump against the glass. Love the look of the bottles, but the pouring process, not ideal. Again, I think I've hit the glass every time with these freaking bottle shapes. We have our three. There we go. OLC, MRC, and PAC. Okay, I'm going to do them both against the PAC just so I have this is the primary reference. Compared to the OLC, the PAC has like cloves and ginger and spiciness on the nose. The OLC is more subdued. It's definitely got some sweetness there and some fruitiness and not as much spice on the nose. Wow, but going back to that first taste of the OLC, I know why it drove me to buy the other two bottles, because it's just a delicious, delicious whiskey. I really like that flavor profile. I like the wine influence on all of these. I like the time that they spent in these different types of casks. I like the wood influences on all of these. I like the choices of casks they made. I love how they blend together and create such complexity. The PAC is a lot more lively. It has a lot more upfront spice and mixture of flavors, where the OLC tastes more mature, more subdued, less spiky. The MRC compared to the PAC, trying to remember the different three-letter combinations, that's getting trickier as I take more sips. But the nose on the MRC versus the PAC, they're more similar than the nose was for the OLC to the PAC. There is definitely more of the similar wine notes, similar fruit notes on both of these. I think the MRC is the sweet note on the trio here. I get more citrus on the MRC, and I get some more kind of a milk chocolate note on the nose even. Yeah, out of the three, the MRC is the sweetest. It has the soft, fruity flavors. The notes are, in contrast to the PAC, they're very much softer than the spikiness of the PAC. Not that that's a bad thing. I mean, you enjoy what you enjoy. And I kind of think out of the three, the MRC has the longest finish on it. They all have long finishes. So, I mean, we're talking about slight, subtle differences, but it has that, I think I mentioned in that video that cognac kind of feel, where it's a warming feel all the way down, and that syrupy kind of aftertaste that I wasn't getting with the other two. As far as pricing goes, the MRC and the PAC are both about the same price. They're $125 from my purchase, and the OLC is still the most expensive of the two and harder to get. It may not be found very easily at all. That was $180 for me. You may have to pay a lot more. Again, price is dictated by not quality, but scarcity. So if there's a demand for a whiskey and there's not a lot of that whiskey around, you're going to pay more for it. I just had a couple comments on my Yamazaki 12 video where people were buying that Japanese whiskey with 12 years age statement on it for $60, and now you pay over 120 for it. The whiskey didn't suddenly get better. It just got more rare, harder to get, and the price goes up. You have to decide at some point whether it's worth it to you to pay more for a whiskey, or if the expressions that you're buying, like these three, would I pay more for the OLC over the flavor profile of the other two? With this Shootout having all three in front of me, I will say that I get the feeling when I'm tasting the OLC that I'm tasting a richer, deeper whiskey that has a little more history to it. It's not like any of these are dependent on their age. They're all about the wood that they were matured in for whatever time they were matured. But the combinations, there's more casking that's done with the OLC, and I think that's what's coming through. The variety of different casks that were applied to the OLC are definitely triggering what I'm tasting here. I'm tasting more subtlety in this one, because as you add more and more layers of different types of wood and different types of maturation, you're definitely going to affect the end taste of the whiskey. And this one has so much more to dig into. So yes, I would pay more for the OLC, and yes, I did, because right after I tasted this OLC and had the review, and then I had a few more tastes of it, I immediately went out and bought another bottle, because I didn't want to not be able to get it in the future. So if there's a whiskey that you like, if there's a whiskey that you think is really good, you're probably going to have to buy a bottle today, especially if it's not one of the mainstream whiskeys that they produce every day, all the time in mass quantities. These are special series from Port Charlotte that aren't produced as their core expression, like the Port Charlotte Heavily Peated 10. So if you like any of these and you see them at a decent price, I would definitely pick them up and make sure you have a bottle around for the future. As for me, would I recommend this series? Definitely. I think that, as I said in the last video, celebrate when distillers are not adding color, not chill filtering, when they're creating experimental caskings of whiskeys. Celebrate that stuff, because it's not done enough. And when it's done, and it's done right, like Bruichladdich and Port Charlotte have done, I think it's worth it. And if you can find the OLC, I highly recommend grabbing it, because I don't know how much it's going to be around. If you can only get the other two, I would at least get a tasting of them. And if you find that you like that expression, if you like Bruichladdich type of whiskey, and you taste one of these and decide, yeah, that's really interesting, go ahead and grab it. I certainly am thrilled that I have all three, and I'd like to hear your opinion. If you have had any of these, what is your favorite? Why do you like them? Give me some tasting notes on it. There's so many flavors in here. No tasting is wrong. Whatever you say is correct. So I'd love to hear what you have to say in the comments. Thank you for stopping by. And until the next video, take care of yourself. Take care of those people around you. And cheers.